Avoidants don't reach out confidently, they circle first, and if you understand this, you'll stop misreading the early signs, and you'll stop reacting from panic. Because most people imagine a reach out as something direct, a message that says, "I miss you, I made a mistake, I want you back." That's how secure people often behave when they care and they're ready. But avoidant psychology doesn't usually move in straight lines. Avoidants often experience the desire to reconnect and the fear of reconnecting at the same time. Their heart moves forward, their defenses pull back. So instead of walking to the door, they pace around the house, checking the windows, listening for what might happen if they step outside. And the reason is not always lack of love. The reason is risk. Reaching out is vulnerability. Reaching out means you could be rejected. It means you could be seen. It means you could have to explain yourself. It means you might have to take accountability for what happened. It means you might have to admit that you were affected, that you missed someone, that you care. And for an avoidant, admitting emotional dependence can feel humiliating because their identity is often built on self-sufficiency. They want to be the person who is fine. They want to be the person who doesn't need. They want to be the person who can walk away without showing pain. So even when they feel the pull toward you, their ego steps in as a bodyguard and says, "Don't expose yourself, don't risk your pride, don't risk your control." This is why they circle. Circling is a way to reduce risk while still moving closer. Circling allows them to test whether you're angry, whether you've moved on, whether you'd welcome them, whether the door is open, whether they still have access. They want information before they take emotional risk. They want to feel safe before they show feeling. That's the paradox. They want connection, but they need control to pursue it. And if you're the one who has been hurt, circling can be incredibly confusing because it doesn't feel like a clear choice. It feels like hovering. It feels like they're around, but not in. It feels like they're watching you, but not speaking. It feels like they're pulling strings in the background, but refusing to stand in front of you and say the truth. And your mind starts creating stories. Maybe they're playing games. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they're bored. Maybe they're manipulating. Sometimes those stories can be true. But often the simplest explanation is this: their nervous system wants low-risk contact first. They are trying to reconnect without the possibility of getting hurt. This is also why avoidants often reach before they reach. They do little things that allow them to feel close without being vulnerable. They watch your stories. They like an old post. They react to something small. They ask a question that could have been Googled. They send a meme. They do something that seems casual enough that if you reject them, they can pretend it meant nothing. That's the ego's favorite strategy, plausible deniability. If you respond warmly, they feel safer to come closer. If you respond coldly, they can retreat without having to admit they tried. So when you see circling behavior, the point is not to jump into hope or jump into fear. The point is to recognize the psychology of it. Avoidants don't usually reconnect through bold confession. They reconnect through gradual testing. Their heart is trying to approach. Their ego is trying to stay protected. And that ego protection often comes from a deep fear, not just of rejection but of responsibility. Because reaching out doesn't only risk rejection, it risks the next step. If you respond, then what? Then they might have to show up consistently. Then they might have to explain why they pulled away. Then they might have to repair. And repair is work. Repair is emotional exposure. Repair is exactly what avoidant coping tries to avoid. This is why your reaction matters so much. If you respond to circling with panic, with a flood of messages, with an emotional interrogation, you confirm their fear that reconnecting will be intense and overwhelming. And they retreat. If you respond to circling with cold punishment, you confirm their fear that you will reject them and hurt them, and they retreat. But if you respond with calm, steady energy, you create a third option. You communicate like an adult, without begging and without bitterness. You acknowledge contact, but you don't reward ambiguity with full access. You stay open, but you keep your standards. That is how you handle an avoidant circling without losing yourself. And here is the most important part of this keynote. Circling is not proof of change. Circling is not the same as readiness. Circling simply means something in them is activated: curiosity, regret, longing, loss, or discomfort. It could be love, it could be loneliness, it could be ego, it could be fear of replacement. It could be missing the emotional regulation you provided. So you don't treat circling as a reunion. You treat it as data. Because the purpose of your life is not to decode their every move. The purpose is to protect your peace. So when an avoidant circles, you don't chase them into the center. You let them choose the center with real behavior. And if they can't, then you let the circling pass like wind, without letting it drag you back into a cycle that costs you your dignity. Before they text you, they test the air. And this is the truth most people don't realize until they've been pulled into the cycle more than once. An avoidant doesn't usually go from silence to a vulnerable confession overnight. They go from silence to signals. They go from distance to indirect presence. They go from gone to hovering. And the reason is simple: testing the air gives them safety. It allows them to measure risk without committing to emotional exposure. It's the emotional equivalent of stepping to the edge of a pool and dipping your toe in before jumping. Testing the air is not always manipulation. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's pride. Sometimes it's the way they've learned to approach connection without feeling trapped. Avoidants are often deeply sensitive to rejection and shame, even if they look detached. They just cope differently. Where an anxious person moves toward, an avoidant often moves sideways. They approach through indirect channels because indirect contact protects the ego. It gives them plausible deniability. If you respond badly, they can retreat and tell themselves they didn't really try. If you respond warmly, they can come closer while still feeling in control. So what does testing the air actually look like? It looks like silent re-entry into your world without a direct conversation. They watch your stories. They like your post. They react to something small. They view your profile. They show up in places you might notice them. They ask mutual friends about you. They mention you indirectly. They send a that doesn't go anywhere. They drop a meme. They respond to something you posted with one emoji. These are not always random. They are often low-risk probes designed to answer one question: is it safe to come closer? And safe doesn't just mean, will you reject me? Safe can also mean, will you demand more from me than I can give? This is important. Avoidants are not only afraid of rejection, they're often afraid of the emotional responsibility that comes after acceptance. If you welcome them back warmly, will you want a relationship conversation? Will you want clarity? Will you want consistency? Will you want repair? Those are normal desires. But for an avoidant nervous system, they can feel like pressure. So the avoidant tests the air to gauge not just your openness, but the emotional climate. Are you calm or angry? Are you healed or waiting? Are you going to flood me with emotion? Are you going to punish me? Are you going to demand immediate certainty? They're scanning for the path of least emotional risk. This is why avoidants often hover instead of confess. Hovering gives them connection without accountability. They can feel close without committing. They can gather information, see if you've moved on, see if you're happy, see if you're dating, see if you're still available. And this is where many people accidentally become a supply of reassurance. They respond to hovering with full emotional availability. They pour out feelings. They explain how hurt they were. They ask questions. They open the door wide. And the avoidant nervous system gets exactly what it wanted: reassurance that access is still there, without having to take responsibility for why they left or how they hurt you. Once they feel reassured, they often retreat again, because now the danger of deeper closeness returns. So the power move for the viewer is to treat these probes as information, not as proof. A story view is not a commitment. A like is not an apology. A meme is not accountability. A is not repair. These are the early signals of testing, not the final decision. And if you respond as if it's the final decision, you reward low effort and you teach the avoidant that they can re-enter without growing. That doesn't mean you should ignore everything and play games. It means you respond with calm and standards. Calm means you don't act panicked, you don't flood them with emotion, you don't rush to meet them in intimacy. Standards means you don't upgrade the connection until behavior becomes consistent. You can respond politely, even warmly, but you keep it grounded. You don't pour your whole heart into a toe dip. You save the deeper access for someone who can actually step into the pool. Testing the air also explains why reach-outs often come in stages. Stage 1 is silent presence. Stage 2 is low-effort contact. Stage 3 is slightly more personal conversation. Stage 4 is the real reach-out, the one that carries intention. A lot of people mistake Stage 2 for Stage 4. They think they came back, and then they get crushed when the avoidant disappears again. But if you understand the stages, you stop building a future on a breadcrumb. The deeper truth is this: testing the air is their way of trying to avoid emotional exposure while still moving toward connection. It tells you something is active in them: curiosity, regret, longing, or a need for comfort. But it doesn't tell you they're ready. Readiness is shown after the test, when they move from hovering to accountability, from signals to consistency, from low-risk contact to real effort. Your job is not to chase them through the stages. Your job is to let them reveal through behavior whether this is a genuine return or just a safe check to see if you're still there. The sudden digital reappearance is often the first hidden sign that a reach-out is coming, because it gives an avoidant the perfect combination they crave: closeness without vulnerability. And that phrase is the key: closeness without vulnerability. They can feel near you without risking rejection. They can observe you without being seen. They can gather information without asking questions that expose their intention. And if you've ever felt that strange sensation of, I can feel them around me, even when there's no direct message, this is usually why. Digital reappearance looks harmless on the surface. A story view, a like, a reaction, a follow request, a sudden watch of your content after weeks of silence. Sometimes it's even subtler. They start viewing but never liking, as if they want to be invisible. And because it's so subtle, your brain wants to dismiss it, then obsess over it, then dismiss it again. But in avoidant psychology, subtle is often strategic, not in a villain way, but in a protection way. Avoidants often prefer actions that can be denied. If you call them out, they can say, I just saw it. It popped up. It's not that deep. That's plausible deniability. It's the ego's way of reaching without admitting it's reaching. Here's what's happening internally. When avoidants start missing you, they rarely miss you in a steady, direct way. They miss you in waves. They can go through periods of relief after separation, because separation reduces pressure, reduces expectation, restores control. But then, especially in quiet moments, something shifts. Their mind starts replaying the connection. They start wondering what you're doing. They start feeling the absence. And because they don't like feeling out of control, they reach for information. Information is control. If they can see you, they feel less uncertain. If they can track your vibe, your mood, your life, they don't have to ask, and asking is vulnerable. Digital contact also lets them test your availability. This is important. Avoidants often fear two things at once, being trapped and being replaced. So when they reappear online, they are often scanning for signs that you moved on. Are you happy? Are you with someone? Are you thriving? Are you posting differently? Are you glowing? Are you quiet? Are you still wounded? They're collecting emotional data without having to risk the humiliation of a direct conversation. And if they see you doing well, it can activate something powerful, not just jealousy, but urgency. It's the realization that access is not guaranteed. That's when hovering becomes more intense. Now, the biggest mistake people make when they notice digital reappearance is they treat it like proof of love. They think, they're watching. That means they miss me. That means they want me back. That means it's going to be different. And then they start responding with their own signals, posting for them, checking if they watched, overanalyzing likes, reading into emojis. This is where your peace starts leaking. The avoidant has made contact without contact, and now your nervous system is engaged, waiting, scanning, hoping. You've been pulled back into the dynamic without even having a conversation. So the power move is to treat digital reappearance as a sign of activation, not a sign of readiness. Activation means something in them is awake. Curiosity, regret, longing, control, fear of replacement, nostalgia. Readiness means they are willing to risk vulnerability and show up consistently. Digital reappearance usually comes before readiness because it's a low-risk bridge. It's like them standing across the river, waving without building the bridge. Why does it often happen first? Because it's safe. It doesn't require them to explain anything. It doesn't require them to apologize. It doesn't require them to answer questions. It doesn't require them to commit. It's the easiest way to feel connected while staying protected. And for an avoidant, protection is the default. This is also why digital reappearance can come in patterns. They watch consistently for a week, then stop. Then return, then stop. That on-off pattern often mirrors their internal push-pull. They get close enough to feel something, then back away to calm down. They re-enter when they miss you, then retreat when it feels too real. Your content becomes the safe version of you, the version they can access without the responsibilities of relationship. So what should your viewer do with this sign? Don't punish it. Don't chase it. Don't make it a conversation starter like, why are you watching my stories? That invites denial, defensiveness, or silence. Instead, hold your center, let it be information. If they want you, they will eventually have to cross the bridge with real contact and real effort. And when they do, that's where your standards matter, because the goal is not to win their attention, it's to build something steady. Digital reappearance is the whisper before the reach out, but only behavior can prove it's more than a whisper. Memory drops, odd-hour messages, and indirect questions are the signs that the circling is getting serious, because they reveal something most people don't understand about avoidance. Their emotions don't always hit them in the moment, they hit them later. Avoidants are often masters of compartmentalization. In the daytime, when life is loud, when work is busy, when distractions are available, they can feel fine. They can convince themselves they're unbothered. They can stay in control. But when life gets quiet, when the noise drops, when they're alone with their thoughts, the feelings they postponed start knocking. That's when your absence becomes louder than their pride. A memory drop is not a random sentence. It's when they casually mention something old, a phrase you used, a place you went, a tiny detail you assumed they forgot. They might say it as if it's nothing. I drove past that cafe you liked. I heard that song. Remember when you said that funny thing? I still think about that trip. And you might not realize how significant that is, because you're listening with a secure lens thinking, okay, that's sweet, but why now? In avoidant psychology, memory drops are often a low-risk form of intimacy. It's them revealing emotional connection without directly admitting emotional need. They're letting a thread of closeness slip out while keeping their ego protected. It also tells you they've been replaying. People don't spontaneously remember specific details with emotional tone unless the person has been on their mind. Avoidants may not reach out directly, but they often ruminate privately. They replay conversations. They replay moments. They compare, they wonder. And the memory drop is the first crack where the internal replay leaks into the external world. Odd-hour messages are another clue, because timing often reveals nervous system vulnerability. Late-night contact, early morning contact, those are the windows where the avoidance defenses are softer. During the day, they can justify distance as business. They can stay distracted. They can keep the image of control. But at night, the body is tired, the mind is quieter, loneliness is louder, and the emotional truth rises. That's why avoidants often reach out in the quiet hours, not because they're trying to be shady, but because that's when the emotional wave hits them. In those hours, the absence feels real. In those hours, they miss you. In those hours, they crave comfort. And because they don't like admitting they crave comfort, they often message in a way that can be dismissed as casual. This is where people get hurt if they don't understand the pattern. They think they messaged, it means they're ready. But odd-hour messaging can also be a soothing behavior. It's a quick hit of connection to calm discomfort. They feel lonely, they reach, they feel relief, and then they retreat again in the morning when their defenses return. That's why you don't measure seriousness by the time they text. You measure it by what happens after. Do they continue the conversation in daylight? Do they make a plan? Do they show consistency? Or do they vanish once their discomfort is soothed? Indirect questions are the third sign the circling is deepening. These are questions that sound casual but have hidden goals. How have you been? What have you been up to? Are you seeing anyone? Do you still live there? You seem different. You're really busy lately. On the surface, they're small talk. Underneath, they're scanning. They're measuring your availability. They're checking if the door is open. They're trying to figure out whether they still have access without risking a direct declaration of wanting you. Because direct declarations create vulnerability, and vulnerability triggers fear. Indirect questions are also how avoidants manage their deepest fear, replacement. Avoidants often act like they don't care, but many feel a sharp threat response when they sense you moving on. Not because they suddenly became secure, but because losing access threatens their control. If you are no longer orbiting them, they have to face the consequences of their distance. So they ask indirectly, they gather information, they try to see if you've moved forward. If you have, they may feel urgency. If you haven't, they may feel safety. And that's why indirect questions can be dangerous for you if you answer them from a place of hoping. You can accidentally reassure them and give them comfort without receiving real effort. So this keynote is telling your viewer, these three signs mean the avoidant's internal world is moving closer to action. Memory surfacing means replay. Odd-hour contact means emotional vulnerability. Indirect questions mean scanning for access. Together, they often show that the quiet part of them is louder than their pride. But the mature response is not to chase or overinvest. The mature response is to stay calm, answer briefly, and watch whether the circling turns into real intent, daylight effort, accountability, consistency. Because the difference between "I miss you" and "I'm ready" is not what they hint, it's what they do next. The door test is the most misunderstood sign because it looks casual, but it isn't casual, it's strategic safety, a random a meme, a reaction emoji, a one-line comment on something you posted, a message that technically counts as contact but contains no real vulnerability. People read it and their heart jumps because it feels like the beginning of reconciliation. They think this is it, they're back. And that's exactly why the door test is so powerful. It reactivates your hope without requiring the avoidant to risk anything. Avoidants often want to know one thing before they truly reach out. Do I still have access? Not access to your body, not access to your time, access to your emotional availability. Are you still open? Are you still kind? Are you still waiting? Are you still soft toward me? Can I still enter your world without paying the full price of accountability? Because accountability is the part that triggers them. Accountability means admitting they hurt you. It means naming what they did. It means risking a conversation they can't control. It means accepting your standards. So instead of starting there, they test the door with a low-effort knock. The door test is designed to be deniable. That's its genius. If you respond warmly, they can continue. If you don't respond, they can protect their ego by telling themselves you're cold or you've moved on, and they never have to admit they wanted you. If you respond with anger, they can retreat and say, "See, this is why I didn't reach out. It's too intense." Notice how no matter what happens, the door test protects them from the one thing they fear most, exposure. That's why it's common. It's also why it's so easy for you to get stuck. Because the door test creates a moment of relief. You've been in silence. You've been thinking. You've been missing. You've been wondering if you'll ever hear from them again. Then A arrives and your nervous system finally gets a hit of oxygen. Relief floods your body. And the problem with relief is that it makes you forget the pattern. It makes you rush to restore connection. It makes you treat a knock like a commitment. You reply fast. You open up. You give warmth. You ask questions. You try to continue the conversation. You might even pretend you're fine to keep them close. And now the avoidant has what they wanted, reassurance that access is still there. Once they get that reassurance, two things can happen. If they are genuinely preparing to reach out with intention, they may use the door test as a first step and then come forward more clearly. But if they are not ready, the reassurance calms their discomfort and they retreat again. That's why door tests are often followed by another silence. They got the comfort, and now the fear returns. Because real closeness requires follow-through, and follow-through requires capacity. So how do you know whether a door test is the beginning of something real or just a soothing check? You don't know by the message itself. You know by what happens when you don't reward it with full access. This is where mature responses change everything. You can reply calmly, politely, but without over-investing. A simple response. A. Hope you're well. And then you pause. You don't chase the conversation. You don't pour your heart into the opening. You let them take the next step. Because if they truly want to reconnect, they will move towards something more substantial, a real question, a real conversation, a plan, an apology, an acknowledgement, effort in daylight hours, consistency. If they only wanted reassurance, your calm response without emotional upgrade will often lead to fade out. They'll leave you on read, reply with another breadcrumb, or disappear. And that's painful, but it's information. It tells you this was not a reach out with intention. It was a reach out for comfort. And comfort without accountability is how avoidant loops keep you emotionally stuck. The biggest mistake your viewer can make is confusing contact with change. The door test is contact, it is not change. Change is accountability, change is consistency, change is behavior over time. A door test is a nervous system probe. It answers their question, am I still welcome? But it doesn't answer your question, can you show up in a way that is safe for my heart? So the door test is the most misunderstood sign because it plays on your hope. It's a knock that feels like a return. But a return is not proven by a knock. A return is proven by the willingness to step inside with honesty. If you want to protect yourself, you do not punish the knock, and you do not celebrate it like it's commitment. You meet it with calm, and you require clarity. You let them reveal whether this is a real reach out or just a check to make sure they still have you. A reach out isn't proof of change. And this is the final warning that saves people from repeating the same heartbreak with a different beginning. Because when you've been missing someone, when you've been grieving, when you've been trying to make peace with the silence, contact feels like a miracle. It feels like the universe finally answered. It feels like the story isn't over. And the human brain is wired to latch onto that feeling, because hope is a powerful anesthetic. It numbs the pain of rejection. It softens the memory of what you endured. It makes you rewrite the past as misunderstanding instead of pattern. So when the reach out happens, the nervous system wants to sprint back to closeness, because closeness feels like relief. But relief is not the same as repair. Avoidants can reach out for many reasons that have nothing to do with readiness. They can reach out because they feel lonely. They can reach out because they're bored. They can reach out because something in their life fell apart, and they want comfort. They can reach out because their ego got bruised when they saw you moving on. They can reach out because they miss your energy, your warmth, the way you made them feel safe without requiring much. They can reach out because they want to make sure you're still available. They can reach out because distance finally hit them, and avoidants often feel lost later, not sooner. The point is not to villainize them. The point is to protect you from confusing desire with capacity. Change is not a message. Change is a pattern. The reach out is simply the opening scene. The real story is what happens after. Do they take accountability, or do they keep everything vague? Do they address what happened, or do they act like it never happened? Do they make a plan, or do they keep you in late night conversation that never becomes real life? Do they follow through, or do they disappear once they feel reassured? Do they accept your standards, or do they try to negotiate you down? Do they respond with consistency in daylight, or do they only show up in emotional windows when they feel lonely? Because here's what an avoidant who is not changing will often do. They will reach out with warmth, just enough warmth to reopen your heart. They will say they've been thinking about you. They might even apologize in a vague way. They will create a moment that feels like reconnection. And the second you respond with full emotional availability, the old dynamic returns. Your hope rises. Your standards soften. You stop asking for clarity because you don't want to scare them. You start giving relationship benefits again. And once the avoidant senses they have access, their nervous system calms. And when their nervous system calms, the urgency to pursue disappears. Then, without even deciding to hurt you, they drift. They take longer to reply. They become inconsistent. They pull back again. And now you're in the same loop, only this time it hurts more, because you believe the reach out meant something different. That's why the real proof is follow through. Follow through means they show up repeatedly, not once. Follow through means they communicate steadily. Follow through means they make plans and keep them. Follow through means they can talk about what happened without shutting down or blaming you. Follow through means they can tolerate your needs without calling them pressure. Follow through means they can repair, and repair is the true marker of readiness. Accountability is the second proof. Accountability is not sorry if you felt that way. Accountability is not, I was stressed. Accountability is not complicated. Accountability sounds like, I pulled away, I was inconsistent. That hurt you. I understand why you wouldn't trust me. I want to rebuild, and I'm willing to do it with consistent action. Even if they don't say it perfectly, you'll feel it in their willingness to face the discomfort. A person who is changing doesn't avoid the hard parts. They move toward them. Consistency is the third proof. Consistency is boring, and that's why it's real. It's not dramatic, it's not hot and cold. It's not highs and lows, it's stable contact. It's predictable effort. It's not disappearing when closeness rises. It's choosing you in ways that your nervous system can trust. So the final payoff warning is this: don't reward a reach out with immediate full access. Don't hand them the entire relationship because they sent a message. Meet the message with calm. Let the next week speak. Let the next 2 weeks speak. Let the patterns show themselves. You can be open, but you should be slow. Not cold, slow. Slow is how you protect your heart. Slow is how you stop being hypnotized by hope. Slow is how you make sure the reach out is not just a moment of loneliness but the beginning of real change. Because if it's real, it won't collapse under standards. If it's real, it will survive clarity. If it's real, they will show up in behavior, not just words. And if it's not real, you will see it quickly. But you will not have to lose yourself again by chasing someone who only returns when it's convenient.